Father, we just thank you for this time that we have together. We thank you for this topic that we've studied, and pray, Lord, that you would help us to close it out today well, and that we can learn some things about effective leadership in your kingdom. We pray all these things in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. All right, so we're going to finish the leadership series today. This is the last topic in that series. And then next week, Mark Smith, Ryan's dad, is going to do the historical background of the book of Romans, and then Ryan and I are going to teach through the book of Romans. So if after this series that was a little light on biblical teaching, if you're hungry for meat and potatoes, that's coming starting next week. So I'm glad that you hang with me. Okay, let me get my talk launched here. So today what we're going to be talking about is delegation. It's a very important topic. It is one that often prevents undesirable or unexpected outcomes when you assign a helper to a task or you assign someone to lead a ministry. I know y'all have had this experience. How many times have you heard someone say, so-and-so took over a ministry, and it's just not been the same? It's not having the effect that it used to have. People aren't drawn to the ministry like they used to be. Or worst case scenario, they've just made a complete mess out of it. And now the ministry is basically dead. And what I want to teach you today is that it's been my experience that most of the time, attention to delegation would have prevented that. A process of preparing someone to take over a role that you, as a ministry leader or a person with oversight, is assigning to someone. We looked at this in our, when we were looking at the stories of the elders in Acts 6, picking the first deacons to accomplish a task. And we talked about the fact that they had delegated that task to those guys so that they could focus on prayer and administration of the word. That's an example of delegation. They found skilled people with qualifications, and they put them on that task. We also looked at the example of Moses and his father-in-law. Moses trying to judge the whole nation and provide jurisprudence to the whole nation. And he couldn't get it done, and it was wearing him out, and he was exhausted. And his father-in-law said, this is not good. So they formed teams. They formed delegated teams to do judging at local levels, regional levels, and only the toughest cases got to him. So these are biblical examples of delegation. And today we're also going to look at how Christ did it. How did Christ develop leaders for ministry? Because we can learn a lot from that. Effective delegation requires setting up your delegate, the person you're asking to take the task, for success through mentoring, training, communication, and clear understanding of goals and outcomes. Learning to delegate it's a learned skill. And so today, hopefully, you will have heard more about it than you've heard before, and it will give you some ideas for training and developing leaders that can help you in your areas of ministry. It does require some effort and skill, but it's sure worth it. I can tell you that. And it's the essence of habit number 2 of highly effective people in Stephen Covey's book, or Highly Effective Christians in our series that we did. And that is begin with the end in mind. Okay, so you've got a ministry. You need help. You need to focus on some aspects of the ministry, but trying to do it all is wearing you out. So you need some folks to help you. Okay, what kind of help do you need? What kind of person do you need to fill that role? What kind of training do you need to provide that person so that they're able to act in your stead and lead the ministry effectively? Is there an opportunity for them to be mentored for a while and see you do it, to see what your heart is, the way you approach it, what you want and dream, what your vision is for the ministry, so that they can share in that vision? That's an example of beginning with the end in mind as regards delegation. If you encounter a failure, if they make a mess of it, in my experience, something went wrong on training, setting expectations, communication, and preparation. Something went wrong. And you may own a big chunk of it because you didn't get them ready. I want to just give you a quick example. When I was a deacon in this church, I was assigned, now at that time, we would pick the deacon and then the elders would just say, here's your ministry, go do it. Now, the way the elders do it, they look for a man who's qualified that has passion and skills in an area and then sees if that man would like to serve as a deacon in that area. So it's a slightly different approach. But when I was selected as a deacon, they asked me to be the deacon over small groups. And we did not have a small group ministry at the time. And I had never been in a small group. I know that's odd, but I had never been in a small group. And this was a number of years ago. And probably around 2004 or so. And so, man, there was a lot of learning to do about small groups. And I learned a lot of ways that small groups can put your church in the ditch and divide your church. So that terrified me because I'm like the anti-division guy. I grew up in a split church, so it's like in my core that I just can't stand that thought. And so I spent a lot of time learning how we should do this. And one of the things I decided to do was really train the small group leaders. Really sit down with them, give them material so they know exactly what's expected. Make sure that those areas where a small group can kind of go rogue and end up in a division as best as I could don't happen. One of the things, for example, that I would go over with them, eyeball to eyeball, was what is your worship going to look like in your small group? And my message to them was it's going to look just like it does right in there. No exceptions. So that was one thing that I thought that maybe I could control by proper training, setting expectations, making sure they understood. We also put in a co-leader model, so we would have future leaders available. So a lot of these were used in that small groups ministry. And luckily, we never had any major failures in the ministry that resulted in division in the church. You do need the right person for the right task with the appropriate level of autonomy and mentoring and with clear communication of expected outcomes. That sentence is what the rest of this class is really about. How do you do that? Now, Jesus, as normally, is a master teacher of these things, is a master exemplar or example of these things. He personally called his apostles. I have found that if you need a ministry leader, it is much more effective if you personally talk to them. Tell them why you see in them the skills and the talents that would be great for this ministry. Ask them to consider if they would be involved in the ministry. It's much more powerful if you make that personal connection. If you just send out the email blast, most of the time you get crickets. Now, this class on the sign up and helping here, we took every spot. So good job, guys. Y'all did great signing up for those spots to help with the coffee service in the mornings. But he personally called them. He saw things in them. Then they had the opportunity to be mentored by Jesus. They watched him. They heard him teach. They saw him deal with individuals in a tender, compassionate way. Also, they saw him confront hypocrisy in the Pharisees. They got to see how he managed things. They got to hear his vision for his ministry, for the kingdom. And he also instilled them with abilities and skills. He gave them increasing responsibility. For example, they got to the point where he sent out the 12, and then he sent out the 72, and then they would report back to him. These are all great things to do in a model for delegation. His kingdom rapidly multiplied, and then finally in the Great Commission, he gave us full delegation of expanding the kingdom, making disciples, teaching, and obeying his commandments. Before sending his disciples into ministry, Jesus allowed them to observe him and he mentored them. They saw his teaching methods and his message, his prayer life and his commitment to prayer life, his interactions with people, his compassion, his methods of correction, his handling of conflict. And it's fascinating to me that if you look in the calling of Paul, after Paul was called, have y'all ever caught this? He went to Arabia for 3 years, and the implication in the passage is he was personally taught by Christ for those 3 years, preparing him for ministry. He says, when I was called to be an apostle, I didn't go to Peter. I didn't go to the other 12. I went to Arabia for 3 years, and he was spiritually inspired during those 3 years. And then he went into ministry. And so Jesus would call, train, mentor, and prepare. And of course, Paul, the most prolific writer we have in the New Testament, took 3 years of preparation. Same thing is true today. When you're asking someone to take on a role, whether it's a small role or a large role, you need to spend some time with them. Spend some time with them in the ministry. Spend some time giving them the opportunity to be apprenticed, to shadow you and to see how you're managing things. This can also be accomplished through internships, co-leading. Have a co-leader that helps you lead your small group or helps you with your ministry. You train and you teach before they're given autonomy, and they get that experience. They get to see your vision, your heart, your approach, and what you want for the ministry. That really gives them opportunity to see if they want to be in that ministry. Kevin, it's good to see you, man. It gives them also the opportunity to learn what's critical about the ministry so that they can keep that going. And another important point is you need to start this process before you are so burned out that you can't serve anymore. If you allow yourself to burn at the edges until you just are gasping for breath and you've not trained someone to take that ministry, then you're going to have a void in leadership in that ministry. When Jesus sent out the 12 in this story in Mark 6:6-13, he gave them a clear mission. He defined their authority. He gave them specific instructions, boundaries, and expectations. And then he also taught them where to go, what to preach, how to respond to rejection, and how to depend upon God. And we also see that they would report back to him everything that happened. So here is an example of Jesus sending out with clear training, clear instruction. They've had the opportunity to hear his message. They've been given some in-gifting, the ability in this case to heal the sick, cast out demons, and then they're being provided feedback on the back end. One of the things we did in the small group ministry is, if y'all remember, we had that questionnaire at the end that everybody would fill out that would provide feedback to the team leader, and it would also provide us feedback if they wanted to be in the same group, new group, what they wanted to do with small groups. So that feedback loop is really important. They did report back, and it gave him, Jesus, an opportunity. It says they reported all they had done and taught. So this was, even though it's only one sentence in Scripture, these were lengthy conversations to be able to report back everything that you did, everything that you taught, all your experiences. But of course, it gave him an opportunity to hear successes, challenges, questions, and share spiritual experience with them, encourage, correct, and teach. Accountability is not distrust. It's part of education and development. We often feel like, we might hurt the feelings of someone that we've put in a role by not really following up, by following up with them, checking on them, seeing how things are going. But that's just not true. See, if you set at the beginning the understanding that we are going to come together, we're going to share, we're going to check on you. We're going to see how things are going. We'll also let you know how we think things are going. Then that's not an affront to them because it's what they expected. And that feedback, that follow-up is very, very important to the mentoring process. You can do this through ministry debriefing meetings, dedicated conversations, performance reviews, coaching or training sessions, questionnaires and feedback, and mentoring relationships. In the small group ministry, we used coaching sessions and training sessions. We had questionnaires and feedback. We also would often send out a monthly email just making sure everything was okay. They didn't need support in any way. And those are ways that you can provide that feedback and potentially catch difficulties or challenges before they become a thing, which is ideal. Now, in the Great Commission, Jesus basically gave us full delegation for being his ambassadors, for spreading the kingdom, for teaching, for baptizing, for making disciples, and obeying all his commandments. And so this is the highest level of delegation, where you say, look, this ministry is now yours. Here's the target we're after. Let's teach, let's baptize, let's make disciples, let's obey all my commandments, and let's expand the kingdom. This promise is for the whole world. Guys, get it done. Now, I'm not going to leave you totally alone. I am going to be with you, and I'm also going to give you a helper that will comfort you, that will remind you, that will advocate for you, and of course, that being the Holy Spirit. And so this is the highest level of delegation, when you really, truly turn over a ministry to someone when they're ready and after all those steps that we've talked about have been done. What we see Jesus do and what is ideal is a progressive delegation model. By the way, this is the classic medical teaching model. Every physician knows, watch one, do one, teach one. Every physician knows that term because that's the way you learn medicine. I know that scares y'all a little bit, but it works because you're still here. But so that it's in medicine, medical education is an apprenticeship. You're learning under an experienced physician after you've gained a certain body of knowledge. Then you're watching that physician do one. Then you're assisting that physician in doing one. Then that is flipped, and that physician is assisting you in doing one. And at each step, you've got to accomplish that step. Once you are doing them without any significant input from the physician, then you do one by yourself, and then finally you start the apprenticeship teaching process. And we see that in Jesus' ministry. It's a great model for any time that you need to train folks to help. It's great for parenting, for professional leadership, coaching, education, and mentoring, a progressive delegation model. So, and what it's not is, look, here's a ministry that I've run for 5 years. Let's say it's been a successful ministry. It's had a great impact. People enjoy the ministry. I'm tired. I need a break. So I found someone to do it. You know how we do it. Good luck. Okay? That's the opposite of everything we're talking about today. All right, so we're actually going to finish early today. So y'all think about if you have things you want to talk about. All right, so this segment is now I'm going to shift to a more granular, what are the levels of delegation and what does each level look like? So now we've talked conceptually, now we're going to get granular. And a lot of this material is from Andy Stanley, who is the son of Charles Stanley. How many of y'all have heard of Charles Stanley? Virtually everybody, right? He's Sunday morning preacher. I've been preaching on Sunday morning since I was a kid, it seems like. And his son is Andy Stanley, who is a mega church pastor in Atlanta. And boy, the dude, I think I've told y'all before, he does a leadership podcast, and I get a lot of great material from his leadership podcast. And man, his emotional intelligence is like, wow, it's like through the roof. I mean, the dude he's just got a lot of emotional smarts. And this is from one of his podcasts on delegation. In his church, they are very, very intentional about effective delegation. And he calls it beyond you leadership. I don't know if he came up with that phrase, but it's the phrase he teaches. So the idea is that as a leader, you are training your replacement. You are training folks that will be growing and nurtured in that ministry. You will be training folks that will become leaders. And you're looking for opportunities to find ways that other folks can get involved, which is the opposite of, I'm the boss. Don't touch anything inside this circle unless I tell you to. See the difference? So the difference is, I'm a control freak, and I'm OCD, and I want everything done exactly the way I want to. I can't trust any of y'all. I may ask you to do a task, but that's it. I'm in charge. I'm the king bee. Okay? Very different than, I will communicate vision. I will communicate what this ministry needs to do. I could get hit by a bus tomorrow, and I need this ministry to survive. So I'm looking for ways to develop folks that will share my passion, share a passion for this ministry, look for ways to engage them, plug them in, get them working. Guys, we need this in the churches of Christ. Other churches are better at this than we are. We need to be better at this. And we need to be better at this because we don't have a huge ministry team. You want to know who our ministry team is? I'm looking at you. I mean, we have a small ministry team. Most churches of Christ do, which means the members need to be active. The members need to be serving. So a Beyond You leader is looking for ways to get them invested, working, creating space for them to grow, is comfortable, communicating vision and then training, but letting others work, letting others have space. They might make a mistake, but you've got opportunities to work with those when they come up, and you've created that expectation. Now, it is important that the OCD control freak that lives inside all of us to some degree, once you delegate a responsibility to someone and you've trained them, you've taught them, you've shared, they're ready, set, go, don't immediately pounce on them and steal it back. Because you all know that demotivates, disincentivizes, and shuts down the whole delegation process. You've got to give them room to work. You've got to give them space to create and to learn. And so don't steal it back, or you'll just you'll disenfranchise and cease the entire process. Okay, so there are different levels of delegation. So you need a helper. You personally talk to that helper. They're willing to help. Thank you, Lord. They're willing to help. So you've got a helper. All right, now what is it that you need them to do, and what level is it at? Because you're going to need to communicate that. Now, I don't mean in a wooden, literal way. John, I'm actually bringing you in on a level 3 delegation role. That's going to be an informed results role. And it's not that. But do know what you need them to do and what level you need them to do that, and then you're going to train them with that in mind. Again, begin with the end in mind. So the most basic level is task assignment or investigation. Say that you've got someone that you're going to put on the Phase 2 building committee. We finally have decided to do Phase 2. We're going to enlarge the auditorium. We're going to put in a multi-use facility in the back lawn back there. So here we go. And you're in charge of that because let's say you're an engineer or something like that. And but you really need to find out, you need to investigate what is it going to cost, what materials would we need, does the congregation even want this certain feature in the multi-use? And so you're like, okay, I see Tam back there. So I'm going to put Tam on that. He's willing to help. Tam, here's what I want you to do. Go find out these 3 things and report back to me. That's it. So that is just a task assignment. That would be like Jesus saying, hey guys, go out there. I'm about to do just an awesome miracle. Those couple of fish you got in that basket. But what I need you to do is go out and put them in groups. Put them in groups of 30 or something like that so that we can more effectively do this. So that's task assignment or investigation. It's a great way. It's the most basic way to get somebody involved in a ministry. Gives you an opportunity to learn them, learn their personality. provides structure, control, and supervision. You're not giving up anything. You really haven't even given them a decision to make. They're just accomplishing a task. Very basic, lowest level. Just make sure you appropriately communicate it in all of these. All right. The next level would be informed progress. The level after that would be informed results. And then the highest level is complete ownership. So I'm going to go through each one of those here in a second. They're in ascending order of individual authority and ownership. You should pick the level of delegation that you think is appropriate for the individual or the task that's to be assigned. The first three levels are the ones that are most often used in team-based ministry, where a group of folks are working together to accomplish a thing. And then the highest level, that complete ownership, is, you just want to turn it over. This is a task you want to turn over to somebody that you know can handle it. And don't call me unless the place is on fire. Effective delegation frees up the leader to focus on important tasks, like in the example of Scripture, prayer and administration of the word for the apostles. And the delegated tasks are effectively completed as planned, the feeding of all the widows, not just the Jewish-speaking widows. And it requires both delegator and delegate to do their jobs. Delegate or delecatee, both are appropriate. All right, so information gathering, we talked about task assignment. You find or appoint an individual to an issue, and they complete that task and report back. They don't make decisions or implement plans. They simply investigate and report back. Should be folks that are interested in the issue and could become leaders. We hope that this will be the first step in training them up to be a leader. You set the time frame for follow-up meetings to share gathered information and follow through. Just like it's at the end of a meeting in business, it's very important that at the end of the meeting you decide what are our next steps, and you communicate those next steps. Even if there are no next steps, you can say, this is wrapped up as far as I'm concerned. But if you're going to follow up, let's say, okay, let's follow up in 2 weeks. So it's very important on that back end process to make sure you've got that locked down. Great tool for developing potential leaders. Okay, the next level is informed progress, where you're primarily directing and supporting. Now, in this situation, you've got a situation where you need them to do more than just a task. You actually need them involved in leading this ministry or the segment of the ministry. But you have constraints on what the outcome could be. And so you do want to be involved, at least in the sense of being kept closely appraised as things are going. So in our example, let's say that there's something we want to do on the multi-use building in the back. Tam has reported back, did a beautiful job. Tam did a beautiful job. He found out that the congregation, he actually sent out a questionnaire to the congregation, got some information back. They do want this feature. Let's say it's a little store shop, the girls cuted it up, a cute little storefront for folks to come in and get assistance, right? And it's got cute little, the canned goods and other household items, and it's got like this little, over awning, and it's just cute, and people can come and get help. And yes, we want to do that, and there's people passionate about it, they want to do it. Okay, great. Boy, he did good at that. Okay, Tam, here's what I want to do. I want you to lead that then. But we have to be careful about some things. I'm real concerned about cost. I'm real concerned about, that the space that we use is in the right location, how it's going to fit in with the other things. So I want you to go ahead and start that process. I want you to find us a contractor, start getting bids, and then report back to me what you're finding out. So you're taking it to the next level. Now you've put him in charge of that, but I want to be involved in the process. We have to make sure we don't spend too much. We have to make sure that it fits in with the other things that we're planning. We have to make sure that it's done the right way, that it offers the services that we can sustain as a congregation. So there's things that I want to stay involved in. That's an example of informed progress. Very, very, very important that you do follow through. If you said we're going to meet every 2 weeks, or if you said we're going to meet after this milestone is accomplished, you need to make sure those things happen so that you're having that informed oversight of this area. But this is the next level up from just task completion. They're actually leading a segment of the ministry, but with your involvement. Now, the next level after that is informed results. And in this case, you're saying, you know what? I want you to bring it all the way home. I want you to bring it all the way home. And when we're right at the finish line, I want you to circle back to me and let me know all the details. Because ultimately, I've got to answer for this. But I trust you to take it all the way home. Let's get it all the way to the point where we're ready to pull the trigger on the contractors and get it built. But before you pull that final trigger, let me know what it looks like. Let's go through it. Now you're asking them to truly lead. You're not requiring scheduled meetings during the process. You've turned that over to them to take it all the way to the finish line. So this is even a higher level of delegation. And again, the point we're making is that effective delegation in the wisdom of the leader, in the experience of the leader, looks at the task that's to be assigned, decides the right person for that task, gets them correctly prepared and trained for that task, then decides the amount of authority that would be appropriate for the task, and then clearly communicates that. And then let them go. Let them run. And then the highest level is complete ownership. Tasks within ministries for full leadership. So it's completely delegated. You're not involved in any aspect. I've turned that over to Bob, or I've turned that over to Tam. Go talk to Tam. I'm actually not making him serve under me on that in any kind of official way. So just go talk to Tam. And so this is complete delegation. You're not involved in any aspect of the task, including maintenance or follow-up. Your ministry leader is not required to involve you at any level, but of course you should always invite consultation when needed. And your indicator is that they are doing a good job, is that the outcomes and effectiveness of the ministry are positive. I mean, if the house isn't on fire, it appears to be functioning, it's doing a good work, then they're taking care of it. And again, you don't want to steal that back if you gave it to them. I would say on the small groups ministry that this is kind of where the elders put me, is go get it done. And they didn't do it all the way here because they were still very interested that it was done well and appropriately, but they wanted me to go accomplish the ministry. What they saw from me was that I was a little bit more comfortable here at Informed Progress. So I would go to them and say, what about this idea? Is this going to be okay? And if they said, yeah, that'll be okay, well, then I was comfortable going to the next step. And you may find that in your delegate, that they're a little bit more comfortable getting that feedback because they don't want to make a mistake or they don't want to disappoint you. They don't want to mess up the ministry. And of course, you have to honor that and say you wanted to put them all the way to formal results, but they're really not comfortable with that. They want to go back to Informed Progress. Then that's why communicating how much authority you want to give them is important, because they may push back and say, I don't want that much authority. But doing this process is so much better than just go do it. Go do it is a great way to be disappointed. It's a great way to get bad outcomes. It's a great way to demotivate a helper, because they go and do it and then you come down with a thundering atomic elbow and squash them because they did something that you wouldn't have done. So this is all way more effective than that. So in conclusion, this is only the second time in my teaching career that we are going to end early. Now, the first time, because remember, for a young man, I sure am full of words. That's what my very first transcriptionist told me in radiology. She came out bewildered on my reports, my medical reports, fresh out of training. Dr. Ford, for a young man, you sure are full of words. That's kind of like, he's that young elder. What thinks? He's a preacher. Okay, so I'm wordy. But we'll end early today. The last time I ended early, we started talking about our experience with God answering prayers, and it was one of the most powerful little segments that we've had. So I probably should learn to let y'all talk more. But strive to live in a way that multiplies others rather than diminishing others. That is what Beyond You leadership is. Appropriate delegation empowers others for leadership and sets them up for success, not failure. You can use these tools not only at Eastridge, but as work, in your home, with your kids, with things you need your kids to do. Appropriate Beyond You leadership multiplies and empowers leaders in your church, and we all know we need that. And it makes ministry fun for them because they've been given the training. They've been set up for success. And so then when they go and they are successful, it's fun for them because what they spent their time doing had a good outcome, was a good work. And that is ultimately what we all hope we do with our time. So that is the end of the leadership series. Questions, comments, thoughts? Yes.
I really like what you're saying is very true. The thing from being a young deacon or member or what is information, being a young deacon is neat, except when you feel like you're thrown in the water, so sink or swim.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing with the community, the church community, when we're told, well, this is what's happening. No input, we didn't know what's going on. It's just keep the deacons informed of what's going on, and at the same token, keep the members informed of what's going on. Because you gotta have the support from the bottom all the way to the top, or it's not going to work good anyway.
So what I hear you saying is that we talked a lot about communication in this talk and how important that is. And you think that even applies to the congregation as a whole. There needs to be lots of communication from our leadership teams, from our ministry teams to the congregation so they understand the who, what, when, where, and why. Is that right? Is that what I hear you saying? Yeah, and I got to tell you, a lot of organizations struggle with communication. They really do. When actually it's one of the most important things we could do is appropriate communication. Let me get her in the back. Yes, and I'll come to you.
I think one of the hardest things of being an effective leader is the control aspect of it, and not you have a big the end result is a great goal, but not micromanaging the little tiny details in between. That's hard because it is demotivating to people.
It is.
And within the church, like he was saying, having deacons to go to, it's so important for those of us who actually do the work, because like my husband and I were in the food ministries, having the deacons and being able to bounce ideas off of and put things in motion is just so great. And then they take that to the elders. That's a great level of that deacon level right there. It's awesome.
Yeah, and I've said that having really, really strong deacons that are that live up to their qualifications and are engaged and are serving and are freeing up the elders for prayer and administration of the word, and are actively engaged with their ministry leaders, our church will explode in its capacity for ministry if that model is working the way it's supposed to work. And so I appreciate you saying that, because yes, and it is hard to give up that control, but it's easier if you spent the time preparing them, because that's going to give you the confidence to know I've spent a lot of time with Tam. I'm sorry, Tam, but you're a good dude. I can just see you right there. So, it's a squirrel. There's the squirrel. Yeah, I mean, I know Tam. I've spent time with Tam. He knows, I believe that he's got it. Then let Tam run. And also, don't forget, if you do go to one of those higher levels of delegation, your hovering diminishes, right? If you go to the highest level of delegation, you said, I'm not going to hover. And I'm not going to whack you if you do something different than would have been my choice. We will look at the ministry outcome. I mean, if you really have driven the ministry in the ditch, guess what? We got a ministry leader to deal with. But that's for the leadership to deal with. But yeah, thank you for your point. Yes?
I was just going to say that, the converse of not communicating enough is over-communicating.
Yeah.
Because then you can discourage people by, having too much information. It's information overload. So you have to balance between not communicating enough and over-communicating.
So there's discernment there between under-communicating and over-communicating. I will say one of the things that Andy Stanley said in one of his podcasts, and I think it's true, is that with increasing anxiousness, turmoil, change, or crisis, communication must go up. So in those moments where there is uncertainty, there is turmoil, there is crisis, there is tension, the voice of your leadership needs to be heard. And it needs to be consistent. And so I do think that's a time to maybe turn up the communication because they need to hear what your leaders are saying. Yes?
What if the person being trained up and you feel like you're getting dropped too quickly? What's the best way to communicate that?
Yeah, I mean, so you're the person that's been asked to serve and you're being pushed into it before you're ready. How do you manage that? That's one of those crucial conversations where you've got to meet with your team leader or the person that you're reporting to, and you've got to tell them that. You got to say, I'm not ready. I need some more time, and I'm concerned that if I go at this point, I could make a mistake, and I don't want to do that. And so that effective communication goes both ways. Now, as a leader, what do you need to have done so that that person is comfortable coming to you? Yeah, well, I mean, you need to have created the relationship and the safety in that relationship for them to feel comfortable coming to you and saying, I'm not ready yet. And again, that requires leadership skills to create that relationship that is safe, that is open. And what I mean by safe is, you're not just going to scream at them and take a swing at them for coming and talk. That's not safe. Yes, in the back.
Everyone is not comfortable being a leader. And we have to recognize who desires it, who does not desire it, and separate the two in how we communicate.
Correct. And in fact, one of the lessons that we really didn't get to do, Ryan wanted to do a lesson on fellowship. That very point, that not everyone is actually wired to be a leader. They're much more comfortable being a follower and serving in one of those delegation roles under a leader. And you need those folks too. I think the leadership gene is a disease. It should be in the medical textbooks. And I have often felt that way. Yes.
I think the challenge is alignment. If the leadership doesn't articulate the objective and where they're going, it's virtually impossible for the followers in their fellowship to align with that.
Right.
And that is not communicated clearly enough in any organization.
I agree with that. So the point that it's tough to follow if the leaders have not clearly communicated, here's where we're going, here's the direction. And it creates some chaos, if you will,
Exactly.
by that lack of understanding.
Exactly.
And that it's not just, here, it's all organizations have a difficulty with that. And I completely agree with you. There's so much energy that's put into trying to decide what that direction is that when you finally get there, you're exhausted and you forget to actually tell anybody. Yeah. I think that's how it happens. I think that it's often an afterthought rather than being a very important part of the process. But yeah, I mean, folks can't follow if they don't know what direction we're going in. So back to the communication piece. Communication, so important. All right, guys, we are at 9:30. Again, I think I need to learn something from this because our interactive dialogue at the end is edifying to me. And so I think I need to learn to make space for that. Be a beyond you teacher. All right, thank you, guys. We'll start Romans next week.